Hey everybody, we have to talk about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 again, as I would not feel comfortable not following up on the last video given the updates that have happened since, which have been a lot. There's some things that really need to be clarified here. First, a short recap of what's happened. Someone who got an early copy of the game came out and leaked information in defense of it. He got tired of seeing all the attacks and misrepresentations and even lies, so he contacted Grums and told him what's going on, and the news were all good. This prompted the director Daniel Vávra to also come out and finally address all of these concerns for himself. Several things were revealed, one of which was that the game was not banned anywhere at all and there were no unskippable cutscenes. The gay relationship people were talking about is a same-sex adventure, as described by Daniel Vávra, that Henry can have optionally. And in order to get it, it's like the classic romances of other games in the past. You don't have it forced on you, it's something that you have to build towards choosing several dialogue options correctly. And the black character is not an ethnically diverse bohemia, it's just a single case of a foreigner brought along with Sigismund's army. And according to the leaker, the way that you interact with him is up to you, as well as the placement in the world, you know, with other character interactions, whatnot. All of that is supposedly realistic. Like, this isn't the case where people pretend to not see color in a setting where people were obviously suspicious of outsiders. It's supposedly all represented accurately. So far so good, I thought. Obviously this was not up to everyone's taste, because some people immediately draw the line at the presence of a gay character. In regards to that, everything I said in my first video still stands. A gay character or a black one obviously don't automatically make a game woke. If they're written well and handled properly, there are no issues. It doesn't come across as an injection, meaning to propagandize the game. The intention is the number one thing that matters. Now, with that said, some people did raise some good questions, which was the case of Henry being straight in the first game and now being made bisexual in the second one, sounding like a woke thing to do. And to some extent they're not automatically wrong, because it does come across a little bit like a similar situation to, for example, race swapping a character, or for example in God of War Ragnarok, grabbing Angrboda from Norse mythology and making her black. It feels like some cheap inclusion trick. But this is what Daniel Vávra had to say about it. I just wasted about an hour looking for the screenshot of what I'm about to talk about and I couldn't find it. It's buried somewhere in the Twitter discourse of the past few days. I'm just going to move on without it. Daniel justified it by saying that he's known men who were seemingly straight and then one day realized that they were bi. And from some meta sense, I mean, sure, that's how bisexuality usually works. You may think that you're straight and then someday you realize that you're not by clicking with someone. Sexuality is a complex thing, there's all manner of shit that goes into it. People aren't automatically flipping between three solid switches like straight, gay, or bisexual. There are spots in the middle where people may have certain preferences, like for example, some gay men are more into effeminate men, others are more into masculine men, and it's the same with women. That's why some women like more effeminate women and others like those more butch lesbian types of women. It's fine, I mean, it is what it is, but I just don't understand why it's being brought up in the case of a video game. I mean, you are a developer, you can create your character however you want. You can make him straight, gay, or bisexual. You don't have to go into the complications of sexuality in order to justify your decision to giving Henry a bisexual option now. Still, you know, I shrugged this off. That's why I didn't even save the screenshot, because as he also said himself, this is an RPG. None of these options are forced on you, they are optional. You can play the game without ever going down that road and making Henry bisexual. If it doesn't feel natural to you as a player, then just don't do it. I'm not about to demonize a video game and the studio for implementing optional romance choices that don't compromise the story or the setting in a game. This is one of the things where people need to be a little bit more open and less strict, because this is how RPGs generally are. You have a character that can romance either men or women. But we'll get back to this question in regards to Henry's heterosexuality in the first game in the last topic of this video. For now, let's move on with the rest. We can't definitively tell if the game is woke or not yet, because we haven't played it. From everything that they've been saying, it sounds really good, because it sounds like they did this thing the way that it should be done. Even if they were influenced to include a gay romance and a black character for the sake of some quota, which he denies, but obviously even if it was true he wouldn't openly admit it, So for the sake of the argument, let's just say that he did. Let's say that his corporate overlords, which are undoubtedly tied in with shit like BlackRock, because they all are these days, and Embracer Group is even worse than many of the publishers we criticize, like they take no prisoners. If your game doesn't do well, they will shut down your studio, as they did with Volition, and if they are short for cash, they'll even cancel really good fucking projects like they did with a Deus Ex game that was 2 years into development already. So Embracer Group being all up in that ESG shit is just as much of a given as Ubisoft doing the same thing. So let's just say, for the sake of the argument, that yes, they did get a bit influenced by this stuff. If not influenced, then we can use a different word, like for example encouraged. Then god damn it, this is how you do it. You would make it fit into the game. Being that it is an RPG, you'd make it an optional romance that can be totally ignored by the player. And in the case of Musa, the foreigner character, you would write a normal character that can be integrated into the setting normally, unlike what was done in Veilguard, where you have to pamper all of these fucking retards in your party talking about modern day nonsense that doesn't even make sense within the setting.
So, I'm non-binary.
I'm gonna myself! Wow.
And in both the cases of Musa and the romance option, you fuse them perfectly with their setting. You take into account that you are in a highly religious Christian setting where homosexuality is a sin, and you make them acknowledge that and have a romance that has to be secretive. Unlike Teresa and Henry in the first game, for example, where they would go out on dates in public to the tavern. And you make Musa to be treated and seen as a foreigner, someone who is not immediately trusted by those around him, which is currently what has been implied. What angers me the most about this DEI bullshit is that these other companies didn't even try to retain their identity and their pro-gamer culture and just dove right in, head first, into the mud. Instead of thinking of trying to incorporate what they could without sacrificing their identity, they went all out, and they gave us shit after shit after shit, and then hired a load of fucking activists to virtue signal online from their community manager positions and attack us for criticizing how their games were degrading. And that's not to mention the motherfuckers that went all out in hiring consultants like Sweet Baby Inc., which exists for one reason only. If these game companies had actually tried to deal with these ESG grants and all of this other stuff with moderation while still retaining their identities and still remembering that their #1 job is to make a good, fun game that appeals to as many of us as possible instead of a retarded modern audience, then maybe things wouldn't have gotten so bad, so toxic, and so divisive that people immediately jump into alerts as soon as they see a gay character in a video game. Lack of moderation is what f***ed everything up. So yeah, as far as things were looking up to this point, I was still in. These were not things that were bothering me, and I was choosing to trust the developers. If the game came out and I saw that it was all bullshit and the game was caked in subtle or not so subtle messaging, then I would go ahead and do what I did with Veilguard. I would speak against it while doing an analysis. The problem is that the situation sadly did not stop here. No matter what you think of the game, Warhorse has been handling this situation like shit. First, as soon as the first rumor came out about the Saudi Arabia ban, Warhorse should have immediately come out and talked about it. And I mean really talk about everything. Talk about Musa, which was also leaked, talk about Henry having an optional romance with a man. There's no doubt that it would have caught some backlash anyway, because like I said in the first video, some people don't care. They don't care who the gay character is, they don't care if it's optional, they don't give a fuck about any of this stuff, they just care about one thing. If it's gay, then they don't want to play. We are currently undergoing a very delicate and toxic climate, so anything along these lines is definitely going to cause some level of uproar in the community. But at least it would have been addressed, because by not doing so, they allowed community managers to enter the fucking chat. And if there's something that I'm ready to broadly state at this point after so many examples of this, even in games with good reputations like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Helldivers 2, it's this: community managers are a disgrace. I don't know why so many companies have to employ the stupidest people they can into these positions, but they sadly just do. Instead of placing someone in this position who is polite, calm, and has a love for their game and their studio, enough love to want their products to succeed and their jobs to remain secure, they hire morons who somehow end up making the wrong decisions and say the stupidest shit that they can come up with on the spot. They often even hire people with activist inclinations who think that it's their job to appeal to a modern audience. Sometimes it gets as nutty as to wanting to foster a community of fucking furries, like what happened with Helldivers 2 Discord community. So first we had that whole Steam community guideline thing that put a bunch of people off because of the language in it. This was, to my understanding, part of the publisher's community management, not Warhorse's community management, but it didn't stop people from feeling sour about it. Then if it had stopped there, maybe it would have been okay, but the issues carried on. After the leak, and then Daniel speaking out and clarifying the situation with Henry and Musa, which actually garnered a lot of support. I mean, don't get me wrong, discourse on the comments was still pretty divided, but even big creators were defending this game, and the fact that a sole gay character or optional romance doesn't make a game a pile of woke garbage that must be boycotted on the spot. So things were still going pretty okay. What should have happened after this was that Daniel Vávra and everyone else in the studio should have quieted down and stopped talking about this shit. Let the game come out and speak for itself. See if they lied or told the truth in regards to how the romance and the Musa character is handled and everything else in the game. Instead, the director thought it'd be a good idea to flame YouTubers in public. And worse yet, he did so towards Rev, who actually defended the game. He came out and called him a grifter, as you can see here in this screenshot, all because of his interpretation of the pre-order numbers being wrong. Rev, of course, spoke out, expressed disappointment, and said that he was actually defending him in the video. And all that Daniel had to say was, well, sorry, but maybe don't use titles with phrases like massive exodus to avoid confusion, which he didn't even do. His title said, quote, woke, unquote, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 backlash results in mass pre-order refunds as developer loses trust. This then became an issue to do with clickbaiting. That's all this has devolved into now. The narrative is that, well, the director should have watched the video, maybe, but Rev was using a grifter clickbait title, so he's in the wrong. Now, taking away the fact that it's still an incredibly stupid idea to call out YouTubers like that in public when you're undergoing an already divisive backlash, something that I think he knows because this is kind of what they touched on a few weeks ago when they talked about how companies are afraid of Asmongold and etc. because of how stupid it is that some companies attack their own fan bases, you know, all that stuff that came up a couple of weeks ago. So, completely taking all of that aside, I think it's just crazy because I don't see the clickbait. Someone please correct me if I have the wrong interpretation of it, but let's read an online definition on the matter. Clickbait typically refers to the practice of writing sensationalized or misleading headlines in order to attract clicks on a piece of content. It often relies on exaggerating claims or leaving out key information in order to encourage traffic. The term is generally used in a dismissive way. So, it's a bit of a loose definition, but it's definitely something used in a negative form, so it implies disingenuous shit. It can't simply imply going out of one's way to market their video using stronger words with the intent of attracting views because that's what everyone does. If it's negative, then it has to imply that there are, for example, lies in the title that lead you to clicking on the video, and then the video is either something else completely or it's about the situation in question, but it contradicts the title. So let's look at Rev's title. Woke is in quotations, which implies that there's something to it that is not literal, therefore easily implying that it is not Rev's thoughts. For example, I also do this in my 2 videos about politics in video games. I write the arguments that I am arguing against in quotations because they are not my quotes, they are not my thoughts, however they are what I am going to be talking about. Then, the backlash word. Absolutely true. There has been a huge backlash online against the studio as soon as the rumors came out that there was a gay scene that was banned in Saudi Arabia. Mass pre-order refunds. This is where there's a bit of sensationalizing, or so I would assume. I didn't really check any numbers after all. There were refunds for sure, as I saw online screenshots on Twitter of people showing how they just refunded their copies, and many comments saying, I just refunded my pre-order. Some of which can absolutely be just people lying, of course, could be just people who never even pre-ordered the game in the first place. They just said that they canceled their pre-orders to show how cool they were, you know, to the accounts calling for boycotts. So yeah, I can understand that. I can see that Rev was definitely doing some sensationalizing in the use of the word mass, but it's still a stretch to call it a lie to the point of classifying this clickbait. Developer loses trust. Absolutely true as well, and it was all thanks to Warhorse's actions too. Their dead silence for so long was exactly what made them start losing that trust. The community manager nonsense on Steam didn't help either. So honestly, in my opinion, calling this title clickbait is like calling the game woke because of a gay character. It's a huge exaggeration, but more than that, it's completely unrelated to what happened. In my view, what really went down was Daniel Vávra saw his title, he didn't watch the video, he assumed that Rev was attacking his game with misinformation for views, when it was the opposite, and then publicly called him a grifter for it. And then, once he was told that Rev was actually just defending him and that he was messing this whole thing up, he retorted with, "Maybe don't use clickbait titles."
What the fuck, Richard? What the fuck?
Excusez-moi, what the fuck just happened? It's like, what are you doing at this point, dude? All you had to do was apologize for making a mistake and hash things out with the creator. You could even do it privately. Instead, he doubles down, and at some point there's only so much red flaggery that people can ignore until we're just mindlessly closing our eyes to the usual pattern. Or even if it isn't an actual pattern, since the game genuinely seems like it is actually just trying to be a fun medieval RPG, people still don't like woke community managers or asshat responses online from developers. This is just one of those things that just does not look good no matter how you cut it. I am more than aware that tensions are running high. It's an incredible amount of pressure going on over at the studio, I'm sure of that, but he had several opportunities and time to realize that Rev is not his enemy and could even be something like a powerful ally, for lack of a better word, because Rev does have a very big audience and he was already defending his studio. But you know what? We can even forget all about this. We can just, push all of this to the side and be like, okay, whatever. The developer had some beef with one creator. It's fine. Everything is fine. Except it wasn't fine at all, because then, to make matters worse, when it had already been 2 days, he comes back at it again, posts a video of some other creator called Mr. Hardcore Mode and says, "It's nice to hear a voice of reason and common sense. I hear you, man. Thank you." And then he fucking tags Rev on the post. It had been over 2 days, this matter was cooling down. I mean, make no mistake, the mistake with Rev was already made, but at least that part of the saga was cooling down. Isn't there an English saying for this kind of stuff? Let sleeping dogs lie or something like that? Mr. Hardcore Mode's video is fine, it's a very measured take. The dude does take into account that the situation is very heated, the dude does take into account the boycotters who are angry because of having to put up with shit for years and years. He isn't even being an asshole, he does seem to genuinely come from a place of common sense and reason and trying to reason with people instead of attacking them, which is what we need more of. But he still does say that Rev's title is clickbait, because it says woke in quotations and it says backlash and etc. Which, well, I already said my piece on that. When you're covering news and the news involve inflammatory situations, it's inevitable that the titles will feature those words. It's news after all, not an artistic video essay. Furthermore, a bit later in the video he also tells Rev to grow up and shit because nobody is trying to cancel him, and it's just, again man, why is Daniel Vávra sharing this and tagging him personally on it? Of course Rev didn't take it well, and Vavra just says, no, I'm not flaming you publicly. The video I shared is not against you, nor am I, okay? Everything is a misunderstanding about the title. Why didn't you just send him a DM saying sorry or something instead then? How can you say that the video is not against him when it's doubling down on the title being straight up clickbait and telling him to grow up? Again, the guy is not being hostile, but it is what it is. When tensions are running high, let sleeping dogs lie. Don't share shit like this and that basically says, hey man, it was a misunderstanding, I am chill, let's chill together. But yeah, you did still clickbait the shit out of your title, dude. This just doesn't look good at all. You couldn't find any other common sense and voice of reason videos on the internet that don't directly at the person who you just beefed with? Fuck me, dude. I mean, here's one for free. It's only 3 minutes longer than the one he shared, and I'm sure that there's others out there because, like I said, the game has had quite a bit of support throughout this mess, from people defending the studio, ironically, Rev's video being one of them. And this was just another unnecessary blunder, and they are so so common now. I mean, just recently as well, Daniel Vávra went out of his way to say that his game is not a Christian game. And here's the thing, I perfectly understand that sentence, okay? I get it 100% because it's kind of like politics in video games, referring back to my video on the matter. You can have political themes in a video game story and world building and characters without making that video game political, as in not making a video game divisive to your customers because of including contemporary contentious political issues. Similarly, you can have a video game with religious themes specifically centered in Christianity, just like the first Kingdom Come Deliverance was, without the game being Christian as in having Christian values, which would make for a very boring game when it comes to RPGs, because forget about stealing, forget about killing, you'd probably have to go to church every day to save your game or something, and you wouldn't be able to romance anyone outside of marriage. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I perfectly understand what he means when he says this game is not a Christian game, as in it is not made with creative restrictions based on Christian belief. But why the fuck are you saying this in public, dude? Why are you saying this? Why are you on Twitter writing this shit? Stop writing. Put the fucking phone down, dude. Just stop being on Twitter. Just put it down. You're fucking up your PR, dude. And for nothing too, like, this is so unnecessary. Nobody needs to know that piece of information. It's not going to go down well. It's just going to unnecessarily create more issues towards certain demographics. Stop. Whatever. I'm moving on. Sadly, it didn't stop there either, because now we had this response here from a community manager to a question that needs to be handled maturely. So the question was, why is Henry forced to be heterosexual in Kingdom Come Deliverance 1? Now, before I tell you what the answer was, let's go piece by piece. This question was already technically answered by Daniel Vávra, who implied that supposedly in the meta theory, like we just talked about, Henry simply thought that he was straight before he developed whatever experience that he's going to have that will potentially make him bisexual in accordance to the player's choice. That's basically what that whole other answer implied when, Daniel Vávra said that he has known men who believed that they were straight all their lives until they realized that they were actually bi. Again, I'm sorry, I don't have the screenshot. I'll try to look it up again while editing this, but just in case I don't find it, let it be known that I got bigger shit to do than to be making up statements. Someone out there can find this for sure. Now, around 10 years ago, during the first backlash of the first game, where woked out people were asking questions about diversity in the game and also about LGBT stuff, one person asked a very similar question, which was something along the lines of, so what about those players that are not straight? Will they be forced to romance a woman? And the studio's response was so based that it should explain why it is that people had so much faith in Warhorse during this entire debacle over the past few days. They said that nobody is forcing anyone to anything, but that the character is just who the character is. He's a straight white male from Bohemia. If you are in a wheelchair, you will be able to walk in the game. If you're Muslim or a Hindu or an atheist or a Jedi, you will be a Christian in the game. If you are an artist or a writer, you'll be playing as a moron who cannot write. And if you're someone who doesn't know how to make a sword, you're going to be playing as the son of a blacksmith who does know how to do that. People aren't meant to place themselves in the game, they are meant to take Henry's role, and Henry is a character of multiple facets. They even said this perfect thing at the end. Being gay or straight is not the only difference between people. People are people. And this was just such a perfect answer, and it is so different from what we're getting today. Because even if you are a woked out moron and you got this as an answer, you can't get mad at it because it's not even antagonizing you. It's just telling you what it is, and you can only really get mad at this if you are unreasonable. Again, I still don't care. I don't find it a problem at all that Henry can have a bi relationship if we choose to do so. Uncompromised player choice is a good thing, but I do take issue with the flip-flopping of the narrative and the switch in the attitude, because you fast forward to 2025 and what's the answer to the exact same question answered by a fantastic community manager? Budget constraints.
What are you, Down syndrome?
So which is it? Was Henry the character he simply was meant to be, and this over-obsession with sexuality is cringe, and people should just stop doing that and just be able to play as Henry without obsessing over what it is that he can do and that they can't do? Or was it just budget constraints? Was he always meant to be bisexual and have a gay romance in the game, but they needed an additional million or two in order to mush together a couple of male character models? This is why you shouldn't hire morons for community manager positions. They do nothing. I swear to God, I have never seen an instance worthy of praise for community managers unless we're talking about, for example, fast food restaurants a few years ago like Wendy's trolling people online, or Arby's or whatever it was doing game-related advertising. I have never seen a community manager facing a backlash and doing an intelligent, mature, socially apt and measured response that helps the company. It's always some dumb shit like, oh, Henry was always meant to be gay, actually, even back then, okay? You think that this is a gotcha on us or something? Think again, sweetie. We just didn't have enough money to make 3D dick models. And now, thanks to all of this nonsense, they got people who were defending them checking out, and I am one of them because I no longer feel confident. I think the game is going to be good, like in regards to the footage shown and everything, it seems that the game is looking fantastic. There's many things that I was concerned with, such as Warhorse removing complex RPG mechanics from the game in order to make it more appealing for the mainstream and maybe dial down the jankiness. But those concerns have been completely cleared. Like, you look at the new character menu and it's just as messy and fucked up as the last one was, but with better lighting.
Nice.
Which is a good thing because that's what I wanted. I wanted this game to still take stupid things into account, such as noise and conspicuousness, and whether or not you're dirty, etc. The game itself seems like it's going to be a good time, especially if Daniel Vávra's statements in regards to the implementation of Musa, the gay romance, and other things to do with the socio-cultural norms of the time are to be believed. But much of my defense of them as a studio relied in the way that they communicated with people, in the way that they supposedly had not changed, and now there's just been too much that puts that into question. I know that it is somewhat unreasonable to expect people to go against their community managers. I understand that this is a business with a professional environment, but at some point you have to question how far are you going to let something go until you, as someone with an image to protect, has to speak up. There's nothing wrong with a developer like Daniel or any other to come out and, under their own opinion, say that certain statements that have been coming out are not reflective of their game. Is that really that crazy or unreasonable? If a community manager comes out and says that they hate gamers, is it really that crazy or unreasonable to kick them the fuck out of the studio? Or at least to come out and cover that up with a bit of PR makeup. This answer by their community manager on Steam not only directly contradicts Vavra's statements, it goes against the very design philosophy that the first game had, and that I am hoping is still present in this sequel, but I'm not as confident anymore. And in cases like these, higher-ups in studios need to learn to speak out or take action, instead of letting community managers say whatever the they feel like saying. It's best to have beef inside of your studio, in private, than outside of it, with your communities. With that said, I'm done here. I hope that this stops for now. There's already been so much unnecessary damage done to the game that a much better PR response and a tighter leash around community managers could have actually saved. Here's hoping that everyone shuts the fuck up for the next couple of weeks so that the game can hopefully come out and still speak for itself. Thank you very much for watching. Sorry that this update ran on for so long. Have yourselves a fantastic day, and I will see you on the next one.